Okay, today's video, we're going to talk about people getting sued and fined for having their websites, what they think is a perfect operating website, for people that are blind, they can't hear, coming and using you for a free payday, whether in some cases it certainly must or can be legitimate. My personal opinion is 99.9% of the time where people like yourself trying to run a business getting sued because you can't use your website if you're blind or you're deaf. These are people trying to get a free payday suing you. Also, it's teams of people, including like law offices, that are professionally suing people, just like patent trolls, where you may have something that you've put together, someone comes to sue you saying that you violated their patent, whether it's true or not, and then you got to defend yourself. They're looking for an easy settlement. So with the ADA, American with Disabilities Act, you actually have a duty, most of you, which I'll get into the specifics here, of making sure your website can be used by someone's blind, deaf, and a few other different disabilities, that, people that are colorblind, that aren't blind but hard to see, stuff like that, so that those people can use your website as well. And which is the topic of today's video. Essentially just being knowledgeable of this kind of thing working. I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly what to do. There's plenty of other resources for that, but I'm going to talk about how people are getting sued, basically why they're basically getting sued, what you can do to generally avoid it, and basically what you're in for if you do get sued. We're going to talk about things, I went over ADA, WCAG 2.1, the 508, accessibility, and so forth, and go over all the need to know information if you are operating a website for a business so that you don't get sued. And I also put fine because also certain state governments are also, including the federal government as well, is fining people for actually not having their website with these certain minimum standards, so people that are disabled can actually use your website. So with that said, I will get into the content. So this video is just for my subscribers. Of course, as you new people that are stumbling across this video, to get familiar with this topic in general. Again, this is not to be able to give you advice on how to update your website. What I can tell you about updating your website to make it accessible is a lot of it is just making it good, usable for people that aren't disabled, but it's tedious. You have to do stuff like have alternate text behind each image, so if somebody can't see an image, they can actually highlight the alternate text, and through an add-on to their browser here, what the alternate text is, so they know what that image would be. And as far as visually impaired people, making sure that you're using high levels of contrast with your colors, having the ability, again, for people that are they can't hear, then you have text forms or text versions of stuff that basically is supposed to be heard on that website. And for the most of you guys, I'm just going to tell you, you're best off just going to a professional, because there's no quick fix. There's different softwares out there that claim that in 10 minutes they'll do a quick scan of your website to tell you if you're compliant or not. Those are pretty much complete bullshit. There's companies, and I'll give you an example here, I'm not afraid. Accessible, you could type that in. It's one of the top players in the space, has a plugin like that. How do I know this? Because I've talked to actual people who are in this space who, that's all they do is this stuff. And you got to weigh, it's just like, a good analogy here is just like in our own PPC management, what I'm in, what my business is in, PPC management or PPC service / agency space. If there was truly PPC software out there that could get you great results, what the hell are PPC companies out there still doing there? Well, it's obviously quicker and easier to use the software. And the answer for that is the software basically sucks. And I've mentioned that many times on this channel. It's better than absolutely nothing, but for how good the algorithms are that Google and Facebook have to optimize ads on their own, you basically don't need the software anyway. It's a Fugazi, basically, and these plugins that basically try to tell you how to make your site accessible. They want to make you have a feel good, give you a good feeling that you are covered, so you could sleep good at night, knowing you're probably never going to get sued. And even if you did get sued, they have in their disclaimer on the software, if you get sued, it's not our problem. So for the most, with that all said, just stay the hell away from it. Hire somebody who actually specializes in just this. Don't go hire a random website firm that says they know how to do this. Hire an expert, or at the very least, hire your website firm that you use for your website now. Have them do it, and then have it checked over by an expert who all they do is just this. Because it's so complex and the rules are always changing all the time. And basically they can learn from their mistakes of where they did make a mistake in the past, whereas these web design firms, almost nobody's asking them for an accessible website, so they have very little experience with it to begin with. You're just best off getting it checked by an expert. So that all said, as far as at the national level, if you have over 15 employees and you have a brick and mortar part of your business, you already know that you're subject to the ADA Disabilities Act, where you have all kinds of crazy stuff you got to do, like your sink has to be so high, and you got to have the wheelchair ramps, and there's a lot of these technical requirements, i.e. that your sink has to be not too high off the ground, and so on and so forth. And you also have people. There was a report I've seen a long time ago on 2020 where disabled people would come in with a freaking ruler that's exactly, so your sink has to be no more than 20 inches off the ground. And they would come in with a ruler that's exactly 20 inches, and they would just measure the sink, and if it was not 20 inches, then they would just leave, and then later on they would basically sue you. And then they would get a settlement through that, and it was a way for those people that are doing this to make a living. Screw a disability income. They could make a shitload of money suing people and not even having to sue. Just say that you're violating the ADA, because ADA doesn't have any enforcement arm at the federal government to come after you. They rely on people suing you. So the government kind of wants people to sue you so that you become compliant. And once you're already hit and they've got documented evidence of this, you're basically cooked. You've got to just pay them what they want and they're done. As it comes to the websites, it's the same thing, but if you have over 15 employees on the federal level, you're expected to not only have, if you have your brick and mortar business, all these different requirements that you may know about, but your website has to have there's other things as well, which is under generally recognized terms, because it's still a very gray area. There's no actual concrete, it's not like other areas of law where, you do this, you can't do this. This is so new. It's still just kind of being hashed out in the courts as to what exactly will fly and what won't fly. WCAG 2.1 are the standards that actually where it tells you, where the guidelines that most people, the experts will generally say that you need, those are the guidelines that have been came up with by the ADA and other parties together to make a website, generally speaking, have all these things that to make it handicap accessible, disability person accessible. So anyway, if you have a brick and mortar business and you have over 15 employees, you already know your brick and mortar business needs to have a bunch of stuff so that you don't get sued by somebody like I was talking about just a minute ago. But your website, it has to be the same way. But that's just at the federal level, okay? ADA, it's the federal government, they have their own laws. There's also state laws, specifically in California and New York, where they don't even have employee minimums for you to have to be able to follow these disability acts as well, which they have their own disability acts, okay? And so with that, if you have one employee and you have a website, technically in California, you have to do a different whole, unique set of things to make sure that somebody can't sue you, or the government fines you. Technically, at the federal level, most of the time they do enforcement through other people suing you and referencing the ADA requirements to make sure, as a point of reference, so that they're using to sue you. But the federal government can fine you as well, and these state governments can fine you as well. So, and believe it or not, through the research that I've also done, there's case law that shows that if you're a website and you're operating and getting customers from California with that state law, you can actually be fined by California and be sued by someone in California because you're technically doing business doing business in California, even though your actual website server and your business for the most part is located in like Texas. So you also got to know about these things just from the standpoint that you're a one-person company operating in Texas. If you've got an e-commerce business selling to someone in California, you're subject to these disability laws in California. Same thing would apply with New York, since they also have their own set of state-level disability requirements there for websites, including with websites. If you're wondering already, like, well, haven't heard anybody get sued or anything, just so that you know, basically about 3,000 lawsuits a year are occurring having to do with websites and people suing because their websites are not don't have all these requirements at the state or federal level or a combination thereof, and trying to go for a payday. Now, that's lawsuits. There's a shitload of more people getting attacked by people that are genuinely individuals or law firms that team up with individuals that are disabled to go after people, and it never gets to a lawsuit. You can look up stats how many lawsuits get to a jury trial, and it's less than 10%. So from that 3,000 different lawsuits, you can assume there's at least, and this is an area where it's exceptionally most people are going to settle because there's no way to win in court. At least 30,000 different people getting sued a year for this, and probably closer to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people a year, which is a shitload. Obviously, with the number of businesses that have a website might only be, a couple 100 million, your chances of getting sued might be 0.5% when you really boil it all down. Those are just general estimates, but it's likely. And of my inside contacts that I have in this space of ADA website compliance, they had mentioned to me specifically what will happen is they will go after a whole industry and all of them all at once, just like the patent trolls do. They'll go after anybody who has a product that uses a similar method and then sue like 50 of them at once and then just settle, and it's just a cash machine. And so in this case, it's the same way. They'll have, like, for instance, since most of these lawsuits, by the way, are in California, New York, and Florida, because the case law there is more established and they have state level requirements, which makes their case stronger. But because they want to go out in California, they'll find industries that are more centered around just California and then hit that whole industry. For instance, the wine industry was one. Like for vineyards that grow grapes for wine, they would just go and database all, or find all the vineyards in California and then just sue all of them at once. Bang! And there'll be like 200 of them sued at once. Or they send a demand letter saying they want $4,000 per, for each time that this person tried to go to your website and couldn't, and they tried to go to your website 10 times, so they're going to sue you for 40 grand. And then you're just like, shit. It's just, you're stuck at that point. So if you're in California, New York, or Florida, you should particularly be worried about this. Whereas in other places, it's less common, but it still happens still. And it's getting to be a worse and worse problem all the time. If you look at the stats and how many people are actually, the number of cases that are going to file, lawsuit. Specifically, with all that said, you should, really weigh, how big of a target you think you are, and then do you want to spend money going in and fixing this stuff. I will tell you the cost of it going to a professional firm and getting all this stuff fixed can be in the 5-figure range. Again, doing it right. You're talking about 20, 30 grand to do it right. If you're going to do it all the way right, 100%, you're judgment proof completely. And so if you're not a big company, that may not be, what you're doing. You just roll the dice and hope you never get hit. Obviously, the bigger company you are, the more of a target you are going to be, because of these people that are suing people, and gaming the system, if you will. They know that if they're going to ask for 40 grand, you might as well ask a company that's doing 10 million a year than that company that's doing $500,000 a year, because it's basically a distraction for somebody that's doing 10 million a year to ask them for 40,000. That's 4% of their income. They can settle for 15,000, and it's 1% of their income. Who cares? Let's just pay it. Let's go on, move on. Versus the other little guy, maybe there's just so much that they'll just not pay, and then they'll shut down their LLC and start a new one, and all that thing. So the bigger you are, the more of a target you have on your back, just like anything else. Respectively, it's actually similar to the I talk about data breaches for your website. The bigger you are, the more people want to breach your website, the more you got to spend on website security. Same thing if you take credit cards with PCI compliance and stuff like that. The bigger you are, the more people want that information. And there's federal requirements that say you have to encrypt certain things and that kind of thing. And if you don't do that stuff, the bigger you are, the more of a target you are to people that are going after people. The government looking for companies and so on and so forth, because if they want to find somebody, they want to find someone bigger. But anyway, it draws some parallels to that, and it just made me think of that when I was analyzing this disability stuff. I call it nonsense because again, all the people suing are just people just doing it to make a living off of it directly. Anyway, with all that said, not being compliant to the WCAG 2.1 standards is several things that you have potentially that could actually happen to you. And you don't do the 508 website compliance that most people, generally all people that have a website should be doing, whether they can afford it or not, and all that good stuff. 508 compliance is what they call making your website disability compliant. By the way, WCAG 2.1 are the standards to make a website compliant, and the ADA is just the American Disabilities Act, so on and so forth. But anyway, the things that can happen to you are severalfold. You can have up to 6-figure fines from the federal government, which that's publicly listed on the ADA's website of how much the maximum fines are for a website that granted, the 6-figure fines are actually for repeat offenders, but the tip, even if you're not a repeat offender, the maximum fine is $75,000. So they can sue you. Again, if you're not a bigger company, they probably won't sue you or fine you that much, because they know they would just put you out of business. But they could fine you a smaller amount. Just depends. If you have a lawsuit against you, of course, that can bring some attention to the federal government, and then you can get fined and sued, which that's actually happened. Number 2, a 6-figure private lawsuit. So in addition to you have a civil fine against you from the federal government to you, which good luck trying to get out of paying that, because if you try to sneak out and just start up another LLC, I've heard from our clients before where like you try to do that kind of shit, the government's going to get you. Maybe not somebody else that sues you, but the federal government's going to get their money. You could get sued privately by the individual, again, whether they're teaming up with a lawyer that does this on scale or individual. Those lawsuits can be up to 6 figures. I've seen public information that shows these kind of lawsuits, particularly as if somebody says they can't access their website, you may ask, how the hell are they claiming that you have $100,000 worth of damages? And the answer for that is attorney's fees. So they could say, I'm suing for $4,000 because I couldn't order a pizza on your website, but then I tried 10 different times, and every time I came back, I expected the website to work. And then suing you, my lawyer charged us 80 grand. And if they win, you have to pay their attorney's fees. So these individuals who are doing this to make a living, they team up with the lawyers. They may have to pay the lawyers, but they know most of the time they'll win or they get the person to settle. And the lawyer is free because the person who loses has to pay for their lawyer. And of course, the attorney firms that do this on major scale, they can rack up all these hours and know that they're going to get their money for these hours because at the end of the day, they got evidence on your website that's published, you violating these disability laws and requirements. You're not getting out of it. They're going to get their money. And so whereas they're going to win some money for their so-called client for the most part here, that firm is going to be able to rack up tons of hours in which they're going to get redeemed for. So that's the second thing that can happen to you. The third, forced scrutinized response. So generally speaking, if you do actually get where the government comes after you, the state government, also the federal government, you're not just going to get a fine. They're going to actually take a step further, which makes sense. I understand logically why they're doing this, but so they're going to make you get your website compliant. And at that point in time, it's not going to be on your own terms. Whereas you may be able to go out and get your website compliant, and it might cost you, $10,000 to do it because you found a good deal. And that is pretty good. But the government, when they fine you, part of, making amends of what you did, you're going to have to prove to them that you've got all your stuff compliant now. And they're going to look at it like through a magnifying glass and with experts who know how to look for every little thing. And that might cost you 50 grand versus the 10 you would have just did if you would have did it otherwise. So you're going to have to do it ultra good at that point in time. And then going into number 4, forced ongoing response plan, what they also usually make you do on top of getting your website fixed, because obviously you get fined, they're going to make you fix it. If you don't fix it, they're going to fine you again. And ultimately, on top of that, they want to have you prove how you're going to keep your website disability disabled, ADA accessible from now on. And you have to say, we got this person who's a disability expert and we have him on staff and we're going to have him on there for the next 10 years, and he's going to make sure that every year we're going to go through and check all the legal requirements. And this can just get to be a freaking money suck. Whereas if you just did it yourself, made your website not a target so it looks like most of your stuff's covered, somebody goes to look at your website to see if they're going to sue you or not, most of your stuff's covered, they don't sue you because they don't have to, because most people, 90+% of people, don't do this disability stuff, which is the reason why nobody does it. Oh, nobody else does it, why should I do it? But then when you get hit, and there's a sweep of a whole industry, you're just sucked in no matter what. Assuming that you haven't done anything, and you're just, of the 100, wineries, like I said, they're going to target, they go through. If any, 90% of them don't have any disability accessibility stuff on the website, so they'll just sue the 90. Because why sue the other 10 that probably have most of it? The 90 will just be like, it's in the bag already. So anyway, they're gonna, you could have actually got your stuff all updated and probably been fine. You didn't need no, ongoing compliance manager, which if you wait to get, sued by and get fined by the government, they're going to make you have that compliance manager. And if you don't do it and they find out, now you can get sued again, fined again, and so forth. So this is crazy stuff, as you can see. You can roll the dice. Hopefully nothing happens to you. If you do get swept up, it can be 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand between the lawsuits and the fines. And then what you have to do to make sure you prove to the government that you're not going to do this anymore. Not to mention, of course, the people that, there's upwards of 5% of the people that are disabled, countrywide. So these people that want to use your website, you're losing a lot of customers that way too. So if you think about it from that angle, and you could justify another 1 to 5% more revenue a year because you're making your website more accessible, it pays for itself. And you may not be able to make that justification depending on who buys your product or service. If I sold pizza, I would look at it that way. If I sell, like for PPC services, I'm not so much, sold on that. That's not going to probably help us out a lot. But, something else to think about as it comes to this ADA disability website accessibility standards and 508 compliance and the WCAG 2.1 standards that you got to have on your website to not be sued or fined by the government. So as it comes to, like I said, the bigger you are, in summary, the more of a target you are. The less, of course, you do to make your website 508 compliant, the more of a target you are. And if you come from the 3 states where most of the lawsuits occur, Florida, California, and New York, the bigger a target you are, with California and New York being where they have state level requirements. So getting sued in state court there, it's very, very easy for them to win the lawsuit. In Florida, there's been landmark lawsuits that they use as a standard for when they're suing you to point to those lawsuits, which is what all law is built upon, is previous court decisions where they can say, hey, you ruled this way on this one, so therefore you got to rule this way on ours. And so Florida has been a hot spot for these lawsuits. So you can weigh all those different things and decide if you're going to do something about this. Just know that if you say, 20 grand, holy shit, I don't want to do this. I don't want to make my website compliant. Don't go running for the guys that say that you can for, $500 get this plugin and then make 2-3 small changes in your website, you're done, because that basically is not going to help you. If you get sued, it's not going to help you. It'll make you feel good more than anything. Maybe somebody looking at your website that sees you've done some stuff, they just don't include you in their list of 300 lawsuits that they're going to put through like next month. But for the most part, software is great. It can fix a lot of the world's problems. But as it comes to fixing business problems, there's just so many business problems that can't be fixed with software because not every single problem is exactly the same. Most problems may be the same, but there's enough unique situations that you can't just automatically assume that one solution will fix your problem the same as every other problem that's similar and have everything be good. When you're doing PPC, you can't use software to optimize your campaigns because industry to industry, things are just slightly different and therefore it doesn't work worth a shit. As the disability stuff comes into play, every website's a little different. One software isn't going to be able to give you an answer for your exact website. It's just not. And I've proven that by talking to the real experts who do this for a living. It's not good. And if it did, like I said, there would be no ADA 508 compliant website consultants. There just would not be, because everybody would spend $500 for the plugin. And so there you go. Gave you the need to know information about ADA website compliance, 508 compliance, and so forth. You make your decision on how you go forward with it, and wrap it up with that. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like the information, were entertained by the information, consider giving it a like and subscribing to this channel, as I'm going to have a lot of other content on this channel, as I already have put together, working PPC strategies to make you more money with your PPC campaigns based upon what our clients are doing at our PPC agencies. So the latest, hottest stuff that's working, you're going to get it on this channel, as well as stuff that's costing you money, and so you can stay away from it. So it's the best information as far as I'm concerned on YouTube as far as how to make more money with PPC on Google, Facebook, and so forth that you can find. Beyond that, if you have any questions about anything on this disability stuff, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, usually within a couple days' time. With that, I do have a brand new program I wanted to tell you guys about, which is we're offering turnkey PPC campaigns. So you could start a business up in a number of different industries where we have ran PPC campaigns and generated multi-million-dollar a year PPC campaigns for clients. in which they either don't need the campaigns anymore, or in a market where if you set up shop in another market, you could use the same exact campaign that they're using to make millions of dollars in one market to make it in another. You could partner up with somebody else to do the work or deliver the products, and you just sit in the middle with your website and proven campaign at your side. And we provide not only the campaigns that are all optimized, been optimized for years and generating millions of dollars in sales already, but also the landing pages along with it, if there is one. And we're talking about a service landing page itself. So it's about as good as a business in a box as you're going to get, as all of these different businesses are replicatable. And the hardest part is getting a customer at a cost that's going to be able to be manageable and still leave you with a profit margin at the end of the day. And that's what we have for you here with this program that we started. So with that said, I will add one other thing here as well. If you do like this content and you want to see a little bit more, I also have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog where we have step-by-step instructions. There's articles written by me where I show how we set up our PPC campaigns for clients to guarantee their results, because that's what we're doing here at our firm. So if you want to learn on a more step-by-step or individualized basis how to set up really good, profitable campaigns, you can find information there as well. So I'll wrap it up with that. Hope you enjoyed, like I said, and hope to see you on the next one where I have another great opportunity and idea for you there. See ya.